Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the David Sparks Show. It is November 17th, and it's windy where I'm at, and I hope you're doing well. Let's get into it. I read a just tremendous article by 3 lieutenant colonels in the U.S. Army. Actually, one of them's retired. In the September-October edition of Military Review. It's a military thought leaders journal. It's published by the U.S. Army, and it's entitled "The Myths We Soldiers Tell Ourselves and the Harm These Myths Do." The article was co-written by Lieutenant Colonel Peter Fromm, U.S. Army retired, Army Lieutenant Colonel Douglas Pryor, and U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Cutright. Let's get into the top 6 problems that these guys identify within this culture of self-delusion that exists within the U.S. military. Number 1 is a command-type delusion. It's that unlimited deference that exists within the command rank structure doesn't allow open communication. And ultimately, if you don't have open communication and truth from 360 degrees, you can't have the truth, and you can have faulty information, and your mission can have problems. Because of the rank structure itself, if a private comes up with an idea that's going to save the world, win the battle, and ensure peace for the rest of humanity's history, the guy or gal who's right above them can say, nah, whatever. And that idea can go into the dustbin of history because of the command and rank structure. And also that structure creates political pressures and cliques within the organization. And the second big problem they identify are what they call self-serving idealizations of soldiers themselves. To illustrate their point, the 3 point to a passage from French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre's essay Anti-Semite, in which Sartre explains how anti-Semites were able to justify, in their minds, persecution handed out to the Jews in World War II. The authors write, "We can use the imagined racial superiority of the anti-Semite as a straw man to evaluate this sense of exceptionalism. Using this approach is not the same as saying that self-deceived soldiers dehumanize others to the degree that, say, German Nazis dehumanize Jews. Instead, it illuminates the psychological process underlying our own forms of exceptionalism by stretching this process to its logical extreme." In Anti-Semite and Jew, Jean-Paul Sartre says that by localizing all the evil in the world in the Jew, the anti-Semite objectifies himself as the Jew's virtuous antagonist. He objectifies the Jew as the embodiment of evil and sees himself as an elite human being. The anti-Semite is perhaps at first conscious of his fallibility, but finally rejects it through his hatreds. He lifts himself up simply by being, in this case being a non-Jew, rather than doing by acting in a manner that would in fact elevate himself. Now, I don't think soldiers are completely guilty of this. The public needs to shoulder some of this as well as the media itself. But when you think about terms like gook, haji, raghead that soldiers have thrown around, it's leading to this loss of empathy, which allows them to then dehumanize people, leading the way, paving the road even for atrocities. Because when you dehumanize people, you can kill them. Easy. They're not humans. The problem among soldiers who possess an idea of exceptionalism. And essentially, what the authors say is that prosperity and freedom are being extrapolated by individual soldiers and society, members of society itself, into personal superiority, instead of basically just the luck of the draw. You were born in America, your forefathers and those who came before us helped to bring about this prosperity and freedom, and therefore I am more personally superior to other human beings. And that brings about quotes like this. Quote, "A lot of guys really supported the whole concept that if they don't speak English and they have darker skin, they're not as human as us, so we can do what we want." That's from Leonard Doyle in his story, "A Dead Iraqi is Just Another Dead Iraqi. So what?" The Independent, July 2007. Quote, There's the soldier at Abu Ghraib who, while forcing a detainee to masturbate above the face of another detainee, remarked, "Look at what these animals do when you leave them alone for 2 seconds." American soldier quoted by Seymour M. Hersh, Torture at Abu Ghraib, New York Times, May 2004. And another thing that the authors mentioned, that it also, the idea of American exceptionalism within the troops of the United States brings about a failure to understand the concept of reciprocity. So when atrocities happen, and then perhaps atrocities happen back to said troops, they don't understand why, perhaps because all of their enemy has been dehumanized and demonized into this other that is easy to commit atrocious acts. But when you recognize humans as humans, then you can see the difference between atrociousness and justified military behavior. They also say that the military values form over substance, and give an example of a platoon in Iraq who was chastised for having long hair and growing beards. Got a lot of pressure for that, but what the upper echelon ignored was severe problems going on a mental level within the platoon because of deaths within that platoon and a lot of the atrociousness that they had witnessed during war. This platoon went on to commit a heinous rape and immolation of a 14-year-old girl. The brass were shocked, but they had ignored the brewing bubble that these situations present with people when you basically give people carte blanche in a killing zone. They go crazy. Also, who gets a whack from these guys in this article is the military brass itself, and the whole idea of manipulative communication, or basically PR, that the military uses to further what the brass wants to see, but is oftentimes not the truth. And eventually it leads to credibility problems. It leads to problems with making friends on the ground. Because a lot of times what's going on the ground isn't what is being preached from up high. And finally, they talk about the military's poor accountability system to prosecute people who commit atrocious war crimes within the U.S. military system itself, being a hindrance to the mission of the U.S. military, essentially, in giving the example of the Iraq War, where we were asked to leave because the leaders of Iraq didn't trust the accountability system of the U.S. military justice system to bring people to justice who've done horrendous things. Here's some of these guys' recommendations. To change the be-do credo to learn, do, become, because they say that the Army ethos of be-do basically assumes that you become something, being something, before you do it. But in real life, that's not how anything works. You learn, you do, then you become something. And they say that's part of that core self-delusion. They recommend virtue education, actively seeking truth from subordinates, such as journalists and others, when it contradicts our desired narratives in the military. Actively fight for the impulse to dehumanize our enemies, because real honor comes from honoring humanity, and that's how you're going to win the hearts and minds of people. More education on when killing is justified. Develop a ethics program within the military. A 360-degree leader efficiency report program. They also say that units should be learning organizations, and the most just alternatives should always be sought in conflict, and that operational leaders should be moral subject matter experts. I could not agree more with these three lieutenant colonels. I don't see... I'm not sure if they're going to be successful within the hierarchical structure of the U.S. military itself, because these are some really, really deep considerations. But when you think about it, when you take on an air of superiority around anyone, say you go to a party and you think, I am better than anyone and I'm going to make all the rules at this party. you're not going to you're not going to be very popular at that party. But if you go to the party and you say, I'm going to be a good citizen at this party, I will stand up for good when it happens. If someone does something bad, I'll stand up with other good people to oppose the bad at this party. Then you're probably going to be pretty popular. And that's essentially what they're saying, that our exceptionalism within ourselves, are willing to delude ourselves, which we all do in all walks of life, is eroding the mission of the U.S. military, and it's just not good for morale. It's not good for operational efficiency. And tell me what you guys think. I think these guys wrote a really, really, really important piece. It's not getting a lot of attention right now, but hopefully I can help get that attention to these ideas, because, man, they hit the nail on the head. But I don't think the organization is going to be really, really, really open and happy about this. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's more progressives like these guys seem to be within the ranks of the U.S. military, and who are really thinking, what do we need to do to make this organization strong, make this organization a winner, and make our missions successful. Ultimately, if the missions are not successful, forget about the rest. And it seems like the idea of American exceptionalism is ultimately killing the ability of the U.S. military to win large-scale conflicts of the idea, or of the mind and body. So tell me, guys, what you think. I'm David Sparks. I appreciate you for watching. I post these to the TYT network. I thank everyone at TYT Nation. And Democratic Underground, thank you guys for watching. Everyone, always, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate it. That's why I do this, for you guys. And, of course, I like to do it. So, in the meantime, I wish everyone a great day, a great week. Until the next time, sayonara.